first meeting in a long time, at least with this board. So if you want to call us to order, I'll do a roll call, and then we'll just talk about the only topic on our agenda.
I'd like to call us to order.
All right. It is 9 o'clock then. And then for roll, Dr. Sunderman.
Here.
Mr. Haston.
Here.
And Ms. Tuck.
Here.
All right. Thank you. All right. We have a quorum then for our committee. And then Dr. Sunderman, since you're the chair of the Education Committee, if you just want to get us started, and the course is on your iPads as well. I'll get there myself. And then and I guess where we want to be driving it is we're going to talk about this in the greater board meeting, and you guys are sort of on this topic anyway. Do you have an iPad?
I do not.
All right, so the should be, I believe it is number 5, and of course number 5A is the CAP for Practicum course. That's just basically their tutorial, their sort of introduction. It's not a robust sort of introduction, but it just sort of gives you what is a practicum. If you look at, for those that may be listening, there's 3 pathways. One is supervisor trainee path. That was 1989 due to Title 11. We all are familiar with that. That's our legacy pathway. Then there was the practicum, where it was 100% of the education and experience was permitted under the in 2022, and then PREA 2022 as well. So this is, and of course you have the tells you what a practicum course is. You guys have already dug into the course itself, and have the subsequent guidelines, guide note 4. I saw Mrs. Tuck was already pulled, had that one up and dialed up. So this isn't an AQB approved. I mean, it's the pathway is approved. This is an AQB course. We have to look at it and evaluate it on its own merits. But AQB does give us some guidance, and so in that regard, and staying within those bounds. If you want to begin the discussion, Dr. Sunderman.
Yes. What we're doing today is we are looking at this particular practicum pathway and whether we want to approve it here in Tennessee. We provide a lot of material to review, and I guess I want to open it up to the committee to see if they have any thoughts about whether they have any questions or concerns about how we want to proceed on this.
I was going to ask, she's not available, she's not online.
She may be, I believe so. Ms. Bond, are you online? Is she on? Okay. She may be showing up then at the full board meeting. I know she indicated that she was going to do that, so sure. It'll probably be the full board meeting at 10 o'clock. So if you have something, put a pin in, we'll just return then.
Okay. All right. I did have a few questions for her. My biggest takeaway or my number one question regarding Ms. Bond's course is centers around essentially the instructors that she's going to hire. Are they going to be licensed in Tennessee? What is their proficiency level in teaching? Because essentially in the course she says that she's going to, depending on how many people are signed up for the course, she's going to have maybe a 2 to 4 student to teacher ratio. And so I don't know if she's going to be heavily involved in that or if she's going to leave it up to the instructors. So that's my biggest takeaway is who's going to be training. Is it going to be Melissa? Is it going to be the instructors? And if it's the instructors, who are the instructors and how much experience do they have? That's my biggest takeaway.
No, that's a great question. Did perchance to Mrs. Tuck and Dr. Sunderman, did you guys, I know individually, obviously this is the first time collectively that we're able to talk with one another due to the Sunshine Laws, but individually as you were talking to the provider, Ms. Bond, did you cross any of that territory in your discussions with her?
Okay. I did not call
did
Ms.
not.
Bond. That's my bad. So I was wondering maybe if we possibly could give her a call now
Yeah.
and see if we could get her online. I mean, I feel like that would be beneficial. I know this is a curveball, but I
Yeah.
believe that would be beneficial before we go before the board or the larger commission meeting.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, just pause for a second, and we'll see if we can get her on the line. Because I know she's going to be ready at 10 o'clock, but perhaps she's ready now. We'll give her a call. Okay. All right. For those that are listening, she's going to pop on here in just a moment. So we just have to hang tight for a few more minutes.
In anticipation for her arriving, do we have any other issues we want to address to her?
Again, I was just sort of concerned about, you know, I would assume if it's a Tennessee program, that the subject properties would be in Tennessee, but it seemed like it wasn't clear how that was going to be organized. I think.
I think it would have to be because you can't praise outside
Right.
the state.
Ms. Bond, are you online? Ms. Bond?
Yes, can you,
Yes,
can you
ma'am.
hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for
Okay.
the last minute sort of curveball. I appreciate you popping on and being flexible. And Mr. Haston had one question, and if you're prepared, he'll go ahead and just pose that. But
Absolutely. Yes,
you, ma'am.
indeed.
Hey, Ms. Bond, how are you doing today?
Good morning.
Good
I'm
morning.
well.
Good morning. Doing great. Doing great. I think, we might have several questions for you at this point since we have you online. But, after reviewing all your information and working through it, I think one of the main questions I had was in the instance that you have several students that sign up for your course here in Tennessee, how are you going to manage those students as far as, are you going to have, when I was reviewing your information, it seemed as if you would have a 2 to 4 student teacher ratio. And so where will those instructors come from? Who will they be? Will they be licensed in Tennessee? Who will be teaching those courses if it's more than just yourself?
Okay. All right. I will get a reciprocal license for Tennessee. So I, as the manager of the program and the lead instructor, will go ahead and get a reciprocal license in Tennessee. Now, my instructors will not have a reciprocal license in Tennessee, but I am the main instructor, meaning I do 80% of the instructing. The classes that my other instructors will conduct, I dictate the course material, the course content, and the delivery of that. So I am the lead instructor. They are just the mouthpiece from time to time, simply because I like having different perspectives. We all can teach the same thing, but we add a little different perspective on it, and that allows the student to benefit at a much greater than if they only listen to one instructor. Now, my instructors are Diana Jacob, who is a national expert. She is also a CDEI instructor as myself. She's in Louisiana. I have Greg Stevens in Dallas, Texas, who is also national educator, USPAP instructor. Diana's a USPAP instructor. I have Pam Teal in Austin, Texas, also USPAP instructor, also certified distance education instructor, just like the rest of us, national expert. Tim Anderson, who is a USPAP instructor in Florida. He lives in Florida. He's a USPAP instructor. He also is a certified distance education instructor, national expert. Let's see, who else? My other instructors, Kathy Putinat, who is in Idaho. She is also an instructor. She is a certified distance education instructor as well. And I'm missing one, Linda Nelson out of North Carolina, and she also is certified distance education instructor. So those are my folks. My instructors are national experts.
Okay. Good
Did
deal.
I miss anything on your question? Please tell me.
No, that's great. I was just trying to understand exactly how the structure of the program will be put in place as far as instructors go. So tell me about when y'all have to do or in the field exercises, or when you're going to measure the houses, when you're meeting in person, how will that all play out from perspective of you'll be traveling to Tennessee to meet with the students on a, I think I'm,
I will be traveling.
okay, go ahead.
I will, yes, I'm so sorry.
No,
Please
go
forgive
ahead,
me.
go ahead.
I will be doing the traveling. Okay, I personally will meet with them. We will meet in a central location. When I select my students, I take in mind the layout of the state. I may select all folks from Mid Tennessee Eastern, or I may select all of my folks Mid Tennessee Western. That way, I will travel to one location. We will meet, and I will do the site visits with them. As the lead instructor, I think it is crucial that I meet with them, that I see firsthand their understanding, because the site visit, even though we know an appraisal can be done without a site visit, we do know that that component exists. There's so much that I gain from them with a face-to-face that I like to do that component myself.
Okay, great.
Are these actual appraisals?
Miss Tuck, you'll shut up.
Yes, the 20 appraisals that they will perform completely on their own, that's at the end of the program. Throughout the program, they will be working on appraisal assignments. These are not assignments that are delivered to First National Bank, Second National Bank, Southern National Bank, none of those. These are not assignments that will ever be delivered to a client, but they are performed as though they were delivered to a client. I will tell them this appraisal you're doing is for FHA, which means they need to go by FHA guidelines as assignment conditions. So everything is turned into me and me only. It is not then handed over to a lender client, but it is the quality that is expected for a lender client.
Ms. Bond, again, so much appreciate you getting on with us at the last minute. That's very helpful to hear from you. I think I heard in one of your videos that this is I guess you're working on your fourth class. Is that correct? Maybe in Mississippi or somewhere else?
Well, I'm now in my fifth class.
Gotcha.
The video that you saw was done a little bit of time ago. I have appraisers from 2 different states in this class that I'm doing right now, West Virginia as well as Mississippi. I want to go ahead and say that now just to make sure that you do know and understand. I do look at capacity in areas. I am not looking to overload an area with appraisers. I am very mindful of that. I am a former VA federal employee and had the responsibility of recruiting appraisers and doing quality control for those appraisers. And I know firsthand the last thing anyone wants is to just abundantly overload an area with appraisers, and yet we leave those areas that have no capacity or low capacity, and we just leave them out. So I do try to be responsible with that state and for that state. Now, I do rely on others to assist me with that information. I'm not going to go into, say, Nashville and put 20 new appraisers. That's not a wise move from the your appraiser numbers standpoint.
Got it. How many students overall have completed the course?
Oh, golly, I should know that number.
Right.
Let's go with somewhere around, I don't know, 40 plus 50,
Okay.
somewhere in that, 40-ish.
Okay.
Can we say 40-ish? Would that be an okay answer?
That's fine. I just want to understand exactly how many people have gone through the program from
Okay.
your program. Have they all been successful passing the licensure exam?
Well, I will say that I've had three three in my first class that were not successful passing the course, completing the course. Therefore, they never got to the point of being able to take a national exam. In all three of those cases, um, they had individual reasons why they could not finish the program.
Sure.
And so, they weren't successful with the program. I did have one individual that was successful with the program, and I always refer to him as my successful failure because he was a PhD. He was the vice president of a community college and thought he was retiring from that position. And probably about 75% into my program, the president of the college retired unexpectedly, and he was their selection. So he really was right at the end struggling to acclimate to the new position and finish the program. Really made a valiant effort, but as I told him, I did not think he would be successful when he took the exam, and he wasn't. But it was because he was so divided. It wasn't that he lacked the ability. It was that his retention for both things at once and one thing being put upon him not being expected. So I call him my successful failure.
Okay. Good deal. So as I understand it, 3 individuals did not go through with the entire course, or 3 individuals have not passed the exam. Is that?
Three individuals did not finish the course. Now, because they did not finish the course, they were not even eligible to take the exam.
Right.
You see, they didn't even finish the course.
Sure. But of the people that have gone through the course, how many have passed the exam? Has it been 100% success rate, or what's the success rate?
Well, I do take in, I think I'm 82% first-time test taker passing. I had another one of my students. She too was a PhD, wonderful lady, and she said, I have test anxiety. I said, you know what? There's not one single license that says I had to take the test twice. And she did, in fact. She failed it her first time. She took it the second time, sailed right through. So I count her in my failures. I count those failures. So I'm at about 82% right now. I have 6 that will be taking the test within the next probably 6 weeks or so. I do expect 100% pass rate for those. I see absolutely no reason why not. One, maybe, if I had one that didn't make it the first go round, she'd make it the second. I have no doubt. She's on the cusp of what we call test anxiety.
Sure.
And again, I stress to them, I'd love for you to pass it on the first try, but if it takes you a second, not one single license says I had to go a second time to take that exam.
And are your support system in place for those that do not pass the first time? Are they having to pay additional money in order to get some sort of tutoring or follow-up for your course?
Well,
or what's say someone fails and how do you handle that?
okay. So there's multiple reasons for failure. If the program failed you, then you are allowed to come back in. Now, that was not the case for any of these 3. Assignments not turned in, at all, not even late, just at all. Appraisal's not done. One particular gentleman actually contacted another person in the program and said, send me all the work that you do. I just need to turn it in as my own. I really don't have time to do this. So we had some, yeah, I'm giving you the Jerry Springer version right now.
Sure.
You know, you don't want the Disney version. You want the real.
That's right.
Okay. So I did have that situation going on. So absolutely not. That individual was not invited into another program and said, you know, hey, pick up where you left off. I do have one of those that I said to her, when your circumstances changed, because it was some circumstances that came upon her she was not expecting. When your circumstances change, you are in my next program, period. $0. So I gauge that on the individual. It depends on why they weren't successful. If they weren't successful because a work ethic, no, they're not invited into a second program. I had one gentleman, his father was not doing well and seriously not doing well, and it just went downhill. And he said, is there anything I can do? And I said, you better believe it. Step out. Your tuition goes for the next one. And that's exactly, and he's about to take his exam. He's one of those 6 that are about to take his exam. He just stepped out completely. He came into my next program and was wonderfully successful.
Okay.
So it is very dependent upon, I am, you know, I'm over the top with documentation. I have a disciplinary policy in place. I am over the top with documentation because if I tell someone they've not been successful and they're not going to get a certificate, there is repeatedly documented reasons why that transpires. It's not an arbitrary decision.
Sure. Okay. I think I'm comfortable. Any other questions?
Melissa, this is Mark Sunderman. I've got a question for you. You've indicated the fact that you are very heavily involved in the instruction. I appreciate that. But my concern is, what are your plans over the next couple of years as you expand the program? I would assume that as you expand in other states, you're going to become more heavily involved. Are you going to be passing the instruction off more to your instructors, or are you just not planning on doing much more expansion than where you are now? I just don't know what your plans are.
Okay, I don't mind sharing my plans with you. I am currently seeking out education providers, not just instructors, but education providers. I have met with multiple that I will license my program over to them. Linda Nelson, the instructor that is in this program now, she is already certified to run one of my programs. She is in this program completely. She has all of my, the entire lesson plans, everything that goes along with my entire setup. And she is going class by class because it is vital to me that the instructor that I license this to, that the education provider that I license this to, that the integrity is maintained. So when she begins her program, which she will in 2026, January or February of 2026, when she begins her own program, I will walk hand in hand with her until I see that the consistency is there, and at what point that she says, okay, I've got this, and I look at it and say, yes, the consistency is here, that continuity, the integrity of the program remains intact, and I completely step out. So yes, I am speaking to anyone, any education provider. I have spoken with a couple of our national providers who have inquired, but have not gone further than that. There are states that are being added every month. Now, I just got an email from California on Friday. I've been working with Angela Jamont. She has it in place. They're ready to go. And so, I need other providers. Melissa can't be everywhere. And like I tell them all, I will die one day. I need other education providers.
My question then is, if we go ahead and approve this in Tennessee, are we approving you, or are we approving some later individual?
Okay. That's a great question. Wow, that's a great question. I would caution you to approve the education provider and their program together.
Thank you, Ms. Bond, and that's correct. And
Yes.
Dr. Summerman, for
Yes.
sake of clarification, anytime there's a material change, we approve this program with this instructor licensed in this state, and then she already mentioned that she would be a reciprocal license. But if there was any, if there was for lack of a better term, a franchise, that would be a material change where that person would have their own course, then that would be reviewed. Obviously, it'd be somewhat expedited because the course material would be all the same. We would just be then looking at the material change itself, which would be the lead instructor.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
And
Yes,
again,
sir.
just for qualification or just for clarification for those that might be listening, this is for experience.
That's
Only.
correct.
It's not.
Okay.
They still have to get all the qualifying education that each license type would require.
Thank you.
I have
Yes,
a question.
that is correct.
This is Sandra Tuck. I had seen your video at Aero in Savannah several years ago, and I was impressed with it. My question is, what does this program cost the people, and how do you say you come into Tennessee, and you mentioned going like Nashville West or Nashville East, how do you find the people to participate in the program?
Okay, so here's the thing. I have been teaching in Tennessee for, I don't know, probably 10 or 12 years now. I added Tennessee, I think about 10 or 12 years ago. Memory doesn't serve me well, so forgive me if I'm off by a year or two. But I have been educating educating appraisers in Tennessee for quite some time. I would use that, and I take my base of appraisers and I broadcast. I am starting to do a practicum in your state. Your state has approved it. It is for the 1,000 experience log hours. And do you know someone that wants to become an appraiser? That's where it begins. Folks like to choose their own, okay? Sometimes appraisers will say, you know what, this highly qualified individual came to me. I just don't feel like training anyone. Can I pass them on to you? Answer is absolutely. It all begins with a resume. I send them a plethora of information when they contact me to review, and then they have to submit their resume to me. I will, at an appointed time, and they know when that is, an appointed time, I will go through all of my resumes and I will conduct interviews. I do virtual interviews. There's a lot of little things that I test for. And I'm going to tell you, work ethic rides really high with me. Availability of time rides really high with me because it does require 30 to 35 hours per week from an individual. That is for their instruction time, their work time, 30 to 35 hours. That's pretty heavy. So I'm really specific when I do the interviews. And then to your next point, what is the fee that I charge? Now, we all know that we have Sherman antitrust laws in place. And my individual fee that I charge for my practicum is an independent business decision. I am careful not to share that dollar amount with other education providers, even if they're looking to license my practicum, because I do not want the appearance of fee setting. I do not want the appearance. So what I do tell them is this: what would it cost you to get a 2-year associate's degree? Think about that. Dig into that. And you have different prices for different community colleges, even your 4-year universities. It's going to be similar. Now, what I have found out, I think, and please know when I say I think, that what I charge is competitive with what the third pathway to licensing, PREA, is also charging. So that's just what I've heard. So the integrity of the program is at the core of everything that I do. I've worked on this for over 5 years, and the last thing I want is to have the appearance that I'm fee setting, which would, of course, cause everything to erode.
Yeah, and thank you, Ms. Bond, for that clarification. We wouldn't expect you to give us any proprietary information, and certainly honor that. And we'll be looking at this course entirely on its merits only. I think affordability was sort of what probably, not to speak for the commissioner, but I think affordability was kind of what they were after. But thank you. I think that satisfies that.
It is. It is affordable, and I can tell you this, I have been extremely pleased that there have been AMCs, and in one case, a private individual that said, if anyone cannot pay their tuition, we will pick up their tuition if we can get an agreement with them that they'll come work for us when they get licensed. Now, I do not do job placement, but I will pass on opportunities such as that to the individuals. I only connect names and numbers, and I step out. And I have had that happen. I have had the tuition paid by others, and I have banks calling me. I have individual appraisal firms calling me. Who's graduating out? Who's about to be licensed, and are they open to a job offer? And again, I only connect names. I step completely out of it. But there are a lot of opportunities. One of my individuals is starting at $62,500 with about $17,000 of benefits and newly licensed. You can't ask for better than that.
Glenn, could you tell me what, and I should know this, and I apologize for not, what are the limits for a licensed appraiser as far as the value limit, or what are they allowed to do versus a certified appraiser?
Oh, yeah, I don't have it in front of me either. I'm like you. I have I'll tell you what, I'll look it up and we'll circle back. Yeah.
Glenn, in that same vein,
Ms. Bond, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well,
I thought she might have the answer to that already.
I only had an answer that you may want to hear. My folks, many of my folks, and I don't know if you're familiar with the Department of VA's policy regarding appraiser fee roster, but there is typically a 5-year experience requirement for any appraiser before they can get on the VA fee roster. And many of my appraisers are on that fee roster already with less than a year of experience. VA has put them on the roster mainly because they know the program. VA is familiar with myself, of course. FHA still at this point cannot allow a licensed appraiser to do an FHA assignment, but USDA rural housing takes licensed appraisers, and my folks are working daily. I will tell you this: I had two different trainees did this. They said they applied to a bank and the bank turned them down and said, no, you're licensed. We're looking for certified. And the first appraiser sent the national recognition that my program has had, the statistics from my program. When that bank reviewer reviewed that, put them on the roster and said, you're on. A second trainee, when I was discussing that story, she said, well, the exact same thing happened to me. She said, I was turned down, and she said, I showed them how I learned, what I learned, and under the direction. And she said, I was immediately put on the panel. So my folks are working. Now, are they doing every assignment out there? No, they're not. There's one particular bank that's in, I think they're in about 10 states, and they've told me, everyone that comes from your program, we are putting them on. We're putting them on. So the quality of the work that they perform is what is getting them on panels.
Thank you, Ms. Bond. I think Ms. Tuck provided me the, I believe, the criteria or the transaction value that their licensed appraisers are allowed to do. And I think it's anything less than $1 million. And then for a complex 1 to 4 residential unit structure, having a transaction value of less than $400,000.
400,000. That's right.
So I've got a two-part question, one for you, Ms. Bond, and then one for Glenn, and then I'll be done. Ms. Bond, first of all, and then let me ask my second question before you start. Do you or are you planning on providing a certification level practicum? And then the second part would be, if she is going to be providing or shooting to provide a certification level practicum, would that need a different licensure from us? I would assume it does, because I would feel that it's a different program, and that's what I would like. If it's not, then that's what I would like it for it to happen, is that they would need to come back, or Ms. Bond would need to come back, if in fact she is going to provide a certification level practicum.
Okay. I will say this. Yes, that is the plan, to do a certification level. Yes, it is also going to be a different approval code. Of course, me as the provider, but a different approval code, because the content of that program will be even more in depth. So I think that answers your question. Now, if you're asking when will I start that, the residential certification, as soon as I am comfortable that I have licensed over the licensing program and it's rolling well, then I will begin the certification, definitely.
Okay, thank you. That's the only questions I have.
Committee, do we have any further questions for Melissa? Glenn, I think we're...
Yeah, no, I appreciate you guys, and thanks, Will, for bringing that up. Yeah, it's for licensed appraiser, and then it would require a separate certification. Yeah, if it would, that AQB guidelines we'd adhere to that. That guide note that Ms. Tuck, and what you've got in your application as well, and that slideshow. So, and we would reevaluate that once we get to that place. But right now, it's licensed appraiser, yeah, and experience hours only. Yep. And then that would be a separate course. Yep. No, that's great clarification. It's not. I mean, it's the scope here is limited to what's before us. We're not just sort of giving a blank check. We could never do that. Right. Yeah. But thank you for keeping the guardrail. Yeah. Highlighting the guardrails. Chair.
Question, I think we're ready now to begin our discussion. Is this something we...
Yes, sir. It's the floor is your.
Okay,
it's your meeting.
Do we need to... Melissa, be
Did you
involved?
Do you did you have anything else that you need to ask from Ms.
No,
Bond?
I have no
Okay.
more
Did you,
questions
Mr.
for her.
Asen, Ms. Tuck? Ms. Bond, I think that's it. And then we'll be, our full board meeting will reconvene at 10 o'clock. And then you're, I think, a little bit further down the line, but it won't take us long to get there. Most of the action items we have on our agenda, as you guys know, move pretty fast. So we'll just look forward to hearing from you then.
Okay, I will.
Thank you so much
I-
for answering our questions.
Yes, thank you, Melissa.
Absolutely. I will say that if you have a phone number that I can call in to participate at the 10 o'clock, that would be very much appreciated because I am having to travel unexpectedly for a class. So if, let me see if you have a phone number on this Teams. Yes, I
ma'am.
see one.
Yep, you bet.
I do. I will check in by phone, but I will be available if any of you have any questions. And before I step out, I want to say a great big thank you to each and every one of you just for even considering this. It is progressive in what's been done, but I think you will be very pleased at the outcome if you go ahead and adopt it for your state.
Thank you, Ms.
Okay,
Bond. We
thank
appreciate
you.
you. All right, bye-bye.
All right,
Did
bye-bye.
you have anything else for the committee, or are we good, or did you have anything further discussion?
Yeah,
Okay, great, sounds good. Go ahead.
I think that it's, in reviewing the program, I think, as you noted, that it's fairly well detailed. I think that it's, obviously it's worked in a couple other states. I'm not thrilled about the 82% success rate, but I know that, that may be due to the fact that some students haven't shown the commitment that needs to be had to get through it. I don't have any major red flags at this point. I feel like the guardrails are up just for a licensed program. Again, it's just a licensed appraiser program. I'm not saying I'm not downplaying that. I'm just saying that it's
That is the scope. Right?
yeah, that's the scope of the program. And I personally don't have. I think she answered some questions. I think the only question that I have from here on out is that I don't know that I feel comfortable, and I don't think it's going to prevent me from voting against it, but I wish that there were more than 20 appraisals, because I feel like she's got several different appraisal types that she's doing, which means it may be only one or two appraisals of each type of property. And I know for me, as a trainee, that was not enough for me to feel competent. So that would be my only sticking point with the program.
I don't have any more comments or.
I was impressed with what I heard, and obviously I'm not licensed myself, so I have no idea in terms of the 20 appraisals, but it sounds to me that even though that is what they needed to do at the end, they're going to be involved in a lot of other appraisals during the course. So hopefully they would be exposed to a whole lot more than 20. And my question is, if they were in a supervisory position, would they even be exposed to that much to begin with? Mm-hmm. And I think that this may be a valuable opportunity for someone who may not be able to find a sponsor. If this was being adopted as the only pathway for our people in Tennessee, then I might be very hesitant. But this seemed to me that this was one option we're giving our potential future appraisers. And one of the comments I was hearing at the Aero conference was the fact of how we are short new appraisers. And what we need to do is come up with ways of solving that problem. And this may be the ideal way of overcoming some of those issues. So That's my view. And if we don't have any other comments, I would put a motion forward. I'd like to move that we recommend to the committee as a whole that we recommend approval of this practicum.
I want to echo your thoughts as well, that's a very good point, that this is one of 3 different ways that you can become a licensed appraiser, and it does open the door for other appraisers to join the profession or trainees to join the profession. So I agree. I think that's a good way to look at it, and I second your motion.
I approve.
All right, we've got a motion to approve, a second from Mr. Haston. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, hearing none, then the committee itself will be the motion to the full board meeting once we get to that portion. And I think, just as a matter of consolation, Mr. Haston, I did look, and it looks like there was I counted the reporting, looks like there's 32. So that prior month, there's a partial month where it looks like they're doing some reports too there. So hopefully that'll help a little bit, ease your mind. Yep, thanks. All right, we can't adjourn because it's a continuous meeting. So if it pleases the chair, we'll recess until our full board meeting. All right, we are at recess then. Thank you. If the chair pleases, we want to call it to order.
All right, we are going to call to order the Monday, April 21st, 2025 meeting of the Tennessee Real Estate Appraiser Commission. I think we can take a roll call.
All right, thank you, sir. Taylor Van Dever.
Here.
Brett Mansfield.
Here.
Will Haston.
Here.
Francie Mello.
Here.
Sandra Tuck.
Here.
Nelson Pratt.
Here.
Dr. Mark Sunderman.
Here.
And Eric Robinson. All right. Chair, we have quorum. If we may, I'll go ahead and read the notice of the public comment period. I'll just first want to highlight the public comment period. That'll be at the end of the meeting after new business, right before we adjourn. And then also the meeting notice is such. Notice of the April 21st, 2025 meeting of the Real Estate Appraiser Commission has been noticed on the website since September 25th, 2024. This month's agenda was posted on April 11th, 2025. Looks like we're ready for the agenda. I would like to add, just maybe make one amendment to the agenda. Looked like we had a case come in right after I sent out. We didn't have a legal report, and then we did. So one case appeared. So instead of waiting 3 months, it just makes sense when we've got relatively light agenda, if we can just add that. And of course, that's printed out and sitting there before you. We'll go over that when we get that. So if it's okay with you, we'll add legal report after director's report. And then if there's no other amendments, just a motion in that regard.
Make a motion, we adopt the agenda.
Second.
Got a motion from Mr. Mansfield and a second from Mr. Pratt in regards to that amendment as well. Do we have all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, hearing none, then we'll add the legal report then after director's report. The meeting minutes. I know you have that in front of you if you want to take a look at that. And then if there's no edits, we'll just need a motion to adopt the meeting minutes.
Motion to adopt the meeting minutes for January.
Thank you, sir. We got a motion from Mr. Haston. Do we have a second?
Second.
A second from Mr. Van Dever. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, hearing none, then we were able to adopt that. All right, experience interviews. You've got those in front of you. Before we go down the list, if I may, just add 2 more. We had a couple come in. Mr. Mansfield would like to add William Mayfield to the list for upgrade to certified general with a recommendation to approve. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
All right. And then Mr. Haston would like to add Scott Fonzie to the list for upgrade to certified general with a recommendation to approve. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. All right. With that, then let me read the rest into the record. Ms. Mello had Anthony Rowlett for certified general, and the recommendation was to approve. Is that correct? Yes. Mr. Pratt had Nicholas Vest for licensed.
Correct.
Thank you. Mrs. Sandra Tuck had Josiah Fabio II for certified residential. All right. And Mr. Van Dever had Jack Redding for certified general for approval as well.
Yes.
All right. Is there any amendments? All right. That being the experience interview report, we just need a motion to adopt that or to approve that.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion from Mr. Mansfield, a second from Taylor Van Dever. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, hearing none, then that's approved. We can move on to the education report then. All right. The only one on your list that's not approved is the practical appraiser training program, and we're going to discuss that. That's on the agenda, so we'll get to that. But for the rest of those items, those are the recommendation there was to approve. Or it's Dr. Sunderman, if I didn't mean to step on your thunder there, if you want to introduce it.
Yes, I'd like to recommend that the items on the list, other than the one that we'll be discussing later, which is from Melissa Bond, which is 2887, all the others I'm recommending that we approve.
All right, that would be his motion, and we'll just need a second in that regard.
Second?
Got a second from Mr. Hastings. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, hearing none, that was approved. All right, and so the practicum pathway, the education committee meeting met this morning at 9 o'clock. As you know, the committee members are Mr. Hastings, Mrs. Tuck, and Dr. Sunderman. And Dr. Sunderman, if you would, just introduce that.
I just took a bite of a crispy.
I used to wait tables, you can tell, right? You know what I mean? I waited and I was like, now!
We met at 9 o'clock this morning. We had multiple questions for Melissa Bond, and we as a committee recommended that we approve the proposal. As a committee, we're very willing to answer any of your questions that you might have. Does the committee as a whole have any questions about this practicum?
Keep in mind, the scope is it's a licensed appraiser course, and it's for experience hours only.
Yes.
Any material changes in the instructor, either the instructor or an upgrade to certified residential, would come before the education committee again on this full board. So the scope is limited. It's licensed appraiser, and Ms. Bond, who will be getting a Tennessee reciprocal license as the lead instructor, teaching 80% of those of the time and those of that experience hours. They still have to get their qualified education as a separate matter, this experience. It's in lieu of the sponsor.
And so if the leadership was to change, then that approval would.
Yeah, we discussed that. If she was to, for lack of a better term, franchise it out, and then oftentimes education providers will do that. They'll sell their courses to other providers, but then that they would all be subject to review as well. That would be a new course, and we'd have to look at that. I would expect that unless there's any material changes in the content itself, it'd be expedited, because then we'd be looking solely at those changes. But it should the course remain in good standing on itself. But yes, sir, that's correct. The guardrails are still up.
Excuse me, you said 80% would be instructed by her, the remaining 20%?
Yeah, she's got some others, instructors to assist with that. And I believe, Ms. Bond, are you online? Just wanted to check with her. Okay, not yet. Also, you're looking at much of that time, and per AQB standard, is going to be in person on the ground as well. And so it'll be a limited offering in a one designated area. She'll either choose West Tennessee, Middle Tennessee, or East Tennessee, and get vet those students in a class size that they can handle. And then those instructors will be teaching on a range of topics. But again, it's for experience. And they still, at the very end, I think I counted in the schedule 32 reports that they'll have to write as well, but for licensed appraiser.
Could the education committee just summarize how you think it'll make the state education better?
I think the nice thing about this is it provides potential students an option. Right now, their options are the Perea, is it?
That's right. You've got the sponsor for 1989, Perea 2001 or 2002, and then the practicum at AQB allowed, it used to be 50% a few handful years ago, and then 2022, along with Perea, they realized this is practicum, and the Perea is AQB's response to the difficulty of finding a sponsor.
So this provides those students an option. It's not forcing them to go the practicum route. And I think this allows the individual the option, especially when the possibility of finding a sponsor may be very difficult. And from what I could tell by watching her videos, interviewing her, I think in many cases the training may be far superior than what they might be getting from a sponsor.
Yeah, we talked with Ms. Bond this morning, and if she's online at any point, let us know. But we talked to her for a good 40 minutes or so, and it seemed like her program is well put together. One of my main concerns at the outset, after reviewing all her information, was, the class size, and depending on class size, she likes to keep somewhere between a 2 to 4 student to teacher ratio. And so my thought was, where are these other instructors coming from, and how do we know their level of expertise? And she would be getting her reciprocal license here in Tennessee, as Glenn said, and the other instructors would not. She lists their names, and their names are on her website, but they are spread throughout the country. A couple in Texas, one in Idaho, one in Louisiana. And from my takeaways, correct me if I'm wrong, Sandra or Dr. Sunderman, is that she would be doing, as Glenn said, 80% of the course teaching load, but the other 20%, I guess, is online, is where these instructors would be chiming in. So my biggest thought is I was a little hesitant not knowing who the instructors were, but if they're as qualified as the way she made it sound, I'm okay with it. But, she's got, it looks like an 82% success rate for first-time practicum applicants. She is wanting to, as we said, she's wanting to pass this off to other instructors, which, again, they'll have to be coming before the board for their certification or for their license or whatever it is. And then she is going to be doing a certification level course. But William had a good point. Once you become a licensed appraiser through this program, all you have to have is a year experience before you can go through the certification process. But she is planning on doing a certified residential program after she starts, I guess, perfecting the license program that we're voting on today. As a committee, I think that we're pushing it along to the overall commission that we have no issues with it, and we're motioning, for it to be approved. But, if there's any other concerns, I don't know if she's online yet or not, but she's not. Okay. Yeah, I at the end, after the conversation with her, I felt confident enough in the program that it was a good, something to provide applicants, people that want to be appraisers in Tennessee, for that pathway.
I also got the impression that she does a very detailed interview process to determine who she's even going to take on as students. So she's just not taking everybody. She's being selective to make sure that who she's getting are people who are going to be committed to this. She's very interested in people who have a strong work ethic. So obviously she wants to make sure they can succeed, and I was impressed with what she wants to accomplish, and just listening to her videos, the fact of she wants to make sure they understand everything, wants to know about all the different types of ceilings and roofs and a lot of stuff that I suspect that they probably are not going to be exposed potentially with a sponsor unless they've got a very, very good sponsor who's going to put in a lot of time and effort with them.
And she has to screen them because if you look at the course is on 5A or 5 and then 5A on your iPads are the like CAP sort of delineation of what a practicum is and some of the history on that. But it's pretty progressive and it's pretty well involved. I mean, you're looking at 7.5 months, so you're gonna have to really buckle down to get all that done. And if you look at the diagram of what each week entails, you're going to have to dedicate a lot of time. So, you're going to have to do sort of a cost and value assessment personally if you're going to enter that program. That's not something you'll just be able to part-time do. It's almost a full-time sort of commitment. And so, she mentioned that there are some businesses that have sponsored students to go through that and just make that their job until they get done. So that's. And those instructors too, they're covering a gamut of topics that, to Dr. Sunderman's point, may otherwise not be covered. I mean, and one way to capture that is to have a diagram and to map all of that. If one of our training programs here is if I write down everything that we need to cover and to make sure we do it, because if you're going off the top of your head and sort of winging it as a sponsor, it's difficult. You're going to probably miss some items. I'm not saying that's the wholesale experience. Obviously, there's some personality-wise, there's some folks like us that are Type A that would make sure we map all that out and hit all those buckets and in service to those that we would bring under us. But this is a way to ensure that all that gets covered. And although the program rate was about 82%, was that your yep? Test taking rate is right at 100. So I mean they're learning something if they're getting past the test, because I know that the pass rate first time is not that high. That's a substantial improvement.
Well, I just want to thank the committee for your time and additional time and effort with this. I know you did this outside of your commission duties, so we definitely appreciate it and your thoroughness and diligence there. So would we accept is that a motion from the committee?
Sir, the motion from the committee, and then we would need a second and a vote if we're going to proceed.
Okay, so the committee has made a motion.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
All right. Thank you for your work. I appreciate that. All right, director's report then. There's only one actual item, that's the Arrow Fall Conference, but the budget. Budget's pretty boring stuff unless you're an accountant. I can only imagine given the budget and the accounting board. That would probably be something else over there. But anyway, I highlighted a few things that jump out at me just as a reminder. What I typically do is just go through that, compare to year end over year end, and then any sort of deviations from that or big ticket items, I highlight those and then try to address that. So what we have, at our last meeting in January, we reviewed all the months of record available to us to the fiscal year through November. As a result, we'll primarily we'll focus on these last 3 months, December through February. You'll notice a spike in revenue for January and February. That's due to our AMC panel reporting period, which runs through the end of March. That's pretty typical. You'll see that year end over year. But, it's like anytime I see that expenditure in A&E, they spend $400,000, I still catch my breath every February and they're like, oh yeah, they have their grants, Well, this is our reporting period, so that's typical. And you also see that money going out to the ASC once invoiced, as was the case in February. So money coming in January, February, we get the invoices, they fall together on February, so one big item going out. And then, let's see. So we cleared 4 invoices totaling $105,000. Hence the surplus, if you go to the bottom of period 7 and period 8, the net surplus and deficit at the very bottom. You've got a surplus in January and then a deficit. You notice they kind of counterbalance each other. One's $52,000 in surplus, one's a $58,000 in deficit. you're just balancing that out. Money coming in, and we're just the middleman. We're just taking it here and handing it over to the ASC when they invoice us. That's it. So that's the only thing that jumped out at me. If there's something you've seen, happy to talk about that or address that. But this information only.
Have we had any update on the review, the annual, or?
No, we did finish. We wrapped that up a couple last week. Wow, yeah. Just last week. It'll probably be a while. Typically, what happens is they'll give us some preliminary findings, and then we'll address that. And if they remains, then they'll finish the report. But it'll probably, I'd hope by your next meeting. I suspect it'll probably be by your next meeting. We'll have an update then. Yeah.
With that, I mean, our reserves, I know that was maybe something they had brought up. I mean, is that still?
No, I mean, I worry more about that with the sunset hearings. Our legislators seem to be more focused on that. And I understand that. I appreciate that. I mean, you don't want to be, it's attention. You want to make sure that you're healthy and you've got enough to cover like 1.5 years. And that's what reserves are for. That's why you have a savings account, But at the same time, too, you don't want to just be building on it either. And, because then you have to look at what your fees look like and your expenses. As you'll see, our this fiscal year, we're in a deficit of 6,600. So, I mean, we're doing really well. I mean, we're not adding to it, I mean, so I feel pretty good about that. If we have 2 years in a row of a deficit, though, then we have to go back up there and have that conversation. And so, we'll see what happens when we get to June. So their next meeting, we might get really lean. I don't know, but one nice thing that's helping us too is on this, we got the spring meeting for Aero is virtual, and they're not gonna. We missed the deadline for that, which is fine. It's virtual, but I think the topics for AQB criteria updates are going to be in the fall anyway. So that's the one I'm looking forward to, and that's the one we want to send some folks to. But we'll save a little money on that as well, the spring, since we're not going to be attending that one. So I think it's going to be really close. And then if we go in surplus or deficit, then I'll look at it, and if we have to make some adjustments for the following year so we don't tap that twice and then find ourselves up at the hill, that'd be good. Yep, that's it. Any questions or comments on the budget? All right, the fall conference then, if we can move to that portion on the agenda. The spring conference, as I mentioned, that's virtual. That's going to be held April 29th, so that's like a couple weeks, and the turnaround on that would be too fast if you're trying to get an authorization or approval for that. And primarily, we had our first board meeting. You wait to see the agenda, but our first board meeting was early this year. If you recall, a couple years back, it was like March, and then typically the travel calendar comes out well in advance of that. Aero is, it's all regulators. It's run by us. It's not an independent association with its own money and its own staff. And so, they got a full-time job already, so sometimes the agenda comes a little slow. And so we keep up with that. But they did give us the one for fall. That's in Atlanta. And that will be sometime in mid-October. They haven't released the agenda. They gave sort of a wide variety of topics. They're collecting speakers, frankly, right now for that. But so I've seen some indication that they're going to cover the criteria and some items like that. But other than that, I don't see why we can go and select our attendees now. So if you guys want to do that, and then whenever they announce that, then I'll reach out to our folks that we want to send.
I thought I saw maybe the 6th through the 8th of October.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Has anybody not been? Have any interest in attending?
Yeah, it's not Fiji, it's Atlanta. Now, Fiji, I might have to go that one, just to make sure that everything's where it's supposed to be. Yeah. All right, so Ms. Tuck, any other takers? Anybody else want to join Ms. Tuck to Atlanta? No? All right. Well, Ms. Tuck, then, you were going to represent us so I look for that. We'll just need a motion in that regard, then.
I'll make a motion.
All right.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And I guess, too, I typically send two, so if somebody else wanted to Okay, I'll put that motion on the floor in case anybody's schedule frees up and has the interest, then they'll be able to go.
Second?
All right, we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries.
Probably a good idea to have a backup anyway, you know, I mean, because if Miss Tuck falls in the field, he's going to pick up that guide on and go on, you know, and so, and I do want the updates. My travel schedule is pretty packed right now. I'm not going to be able to make it myself, so it'd be really nice to have. I usually get a pretty good report from my counterparts, you know, out there, but it'd be nice to have somebody firsthand, you know, there from our board. So thank you, Ms. Tuck, for being willing to do that. All right, looks like the legal report, so.
Good morning. This is just a quick one. I'll just go over it very quickly, and then if there's any questions. This is for case 2025001-861. Complainant is the homeowner of the subject property. Complainant alleged that respondent used improper comparables. I requested for an expert review of the report. The expert reviewed the original appraisal report and found there were no use PAP violations within the report. Council is recommending closure.
I make a motion that we close.
Got a motion on the floor?
I second it.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
And that is it for the legal report.
Does legal have anything else? No? Okay. Then it looks like a new business, public comment, then adjourn. So do we have any new business?
I was going to just ask, I guess, the commission, has anyone in their practice been inundated with hybrid reports, bifurcated reports?
Requests? Requests, yes.
Okay. Have we discussed as a commission the any sort of governance over the data collectors that are sent out for the bifurcated hybrid appraisals?
I remember us having a discussion about the data collectors. I forget for lack of a better term, but the data collection when it was strictly data collection, that it was outside of our scope, but where we didn't clearly delineate every scenario, because then we didn't want to sort of creating loopholes. We said, hey, look, the scope for licensure applies in all cases, you know, and there's not some sort of bilateral sort of exception to that. And then and it's your responsibility to know where those lines are, and should you fall into that would be a complaint to be delineated at that time. That was how I recall that conversation, but it's been a minute, you know. But yeah, if it's necessarily, if they fall within the scope for appraiser, then they would be licensed. But data collection, I mean, that's not broad. It's not just wide open.
Does any state of Tennessee commission, regulatory committee, do they have any sort of, do data collectors fall under any, or are they just sort of in the Wild West? They can, basically, do they have any sort of ways that they are governed that we know of?
Well, whoever's conducting the report is responsible for that report. You know, it's kind of like, so the onus is on them to separate that out. They're responsible for it. Like, I would not let a data collector, for lack of a better term, just do whatever they want. You know, because if I'm putting my name on it, I could get disciplined for that. That goes on the registry. That would be a poor business decision, and it's unethical. You should be looking at what they're doing, and I mean, if they step into those bounds, I mean, they take use PAP, you know, and if somebody is stepping all over that territory, it's unethical, and eventually they're gonna find themselves in subject of a complaint, and so. And if they're allowing somebody to do that falls within the scope of appraisal work, then they're going to be the subject of that complaint as well. So then that's going to be two people on there as well. And that's typically how we handle with the other boards too. Like some folks are worried about AI, and I was like, well, you don't turn that loose. I mean, if it was to, you're still signing and stamping those plans. That's what we tell our architects and engineers. And I would say to our appraisers, you're submitting the report. It's your name on it. So if it's truly data collection, you got somebody, taking some pictures or measurements or something to that effect, fine. But if you're going beyond that and they're getting into territory that strictly belongs to the appraiser, then that's on them. But they're subject to all of the rules and requirements.
Mm-hmm.
I know I've never accepted that kind of an order and will not accept that kind of an order. But I think the problem is the appraiser has not seen that property. And they can double check with whatever data is available, such as an old MLS listing or tax data or whatever, but they don't know if that person who's the property data collector knew what they were doing, if they measured by ANSI, if it's right or wrong. I mean, and I have heard, and like I said, I've never done any of these, that even if you're the appraiser and you want to go out and go in that property or do it, in other words, do it yourself, some of the AMCs won't allow that.
Yeah. I wouldn't do it. I mean, just personally, but that, I don't know what tools they're using. So I can't just say, no, you could never do that, because I mean, there's some tools that would be more beneficial than there's places that you can send a tool that you couldn't even go, I mean, you got drones and you've got robots, and I don't know how exhaustive this is, so to say, no, you can do it, and that somebody could take better pictures than you could on the property. You've got realtors sometimes that can do 3D modeling, and I mean, it's just coming so fast. So we don't want to say, no, you could never use a data collector. But at the same time, too, I would be very cautious. If somebody's just going out there with their measuring tape, and like their cell phone and taking pictures, and you don't have any idea where they're coming from. I mean, I think you should figure that out. I wouldn't just in all cases just say it's just take what they give you.
Well, as the appraiser too, you don't have your eyes on that property. So you don't know, say there's an electrical substation right behind that,
Right.
if they don't put that in that picture
Right.
or tell you that.
Right.
And so that's part of the problem also.
Yeah.
It is something that it's probably been 2 or 3 years ago now that
So
we did have a pretty lengthy discussion, and I think some of the issues were that the perception is that this person is an appraiser when they come to your house. And so in reality, there's no background check. I mean, this individual could, have bonded out of jail, or whatever. And so, this person is coming into your house with the perception of being an appraiser. But I think our determination on the board was, unless they cross the line of actually providing a value, then that's where our jurisdiction ends. And so that's kind of where we
Thank you
ended
for that,
at
because
point in time.
I knew there was a piece that I was missing, but you're right. Them, if they're holding themselves out as appraiser, and we would look at the context of that too. What did they say? What does their business card say? There's stuff like that too. If they're coming out and saying, hey, I'm just collecting information for the appraisal, that's different. They're coming out there and like, hey, I'm here to appraise your work. That's different.
Say that they're the inspector, is
Okay.
what they say 99% of the time. And the ones I have seen, they are licensed realtors. And it confuses the other licensed realtors who are selling the house.
Great discussion. I mean, and if we get a case, we'll bring it before the commission and dig into a little bit more. But things are evolving and changing so fast in all the industries, and so I appreciate you keeping an eye on it. It's an important topic. I mean, we kind of want to hammer these things out. Typically, that happens when we get a complaint or a case. But if we have any ability to do that beforehand, that'd be nice too.
Is there any world that the commission could require, if you're engaging in appraisal services, that at least a background check is performed, or is that a whole different? Yeah.
No, we only regulate the appraiser themselves. Anything outside of that would be outside of our scope and jurisdiction. Yeah.
Would it ever be possible, or would there ever be if like Brett said, that if it's under appraisal services, it would seem that would it be possible for us to come up with a certification program for data collections? That falls underneath the Tennessee Real Estate Appraiser Commission, since it is it's part of an appraisal process, so.
Statute. Yeah, it would have to come by statute. I didn't know it on step in.
No, like if it doesn't fall under our jurisdiction within the statutes and the regulations, that would be considering we would be getting into some anti-competitive practices there, trying to regulate individuals that do not necessarily fall under our jurisdiction. So whenever we're looking at something, we're looking at the specific definitions that have been provided in our statutes. And if it doesn't match there directly, then that's not going to be something that we're able to regulate. So if that is something that changes nationwide and is determined to become within the real estate appraiser industry, we can look at it there. But right now, no, we cannot do that.
Would that come from, I know you just said on a national level, but would that also, the statutes being, would it come from Capitol Hill here in Tennessee?
It could. If that was a bill that were to be passed in a future session of the legislature, then yes. But it would more than likely not come from us, because we already have some standards that exceed the standards that have been provided by the ASC and AQB, which is not necessarily something that's an issue. It is something that they bring up to us every audit season, but that would be something that it would have to come from either the General Assembly or from the federal government.
Thank you.
I'd like to say one other thing from a residential appraisal viewpoint. Residential appraisers don't see the need for property data collectors. They're put in place because they're a cheaper alternative than paying the appraiser the typical fee, because the property data collector doesn't make as much. And so I think most appraisers would be of the part, well, we don't care, we'd rather they not even exist, because we'd rather just do our complete appraisal.
And this isn't unique to this board. Every board struggles with terms and the meaning of those terms, and then what they imply versus scope, and then overlap, with other industries. And so it's ongoing. It's a tension that we all have to sort of, a balance that we have to strike in these conversations. So I know I appreciate the conversation, but yeah, typically what Anna was talking about would be legislation. Any other comments or questions? All right. That was, unless there's any new business, then I think we're ready for public comment section. We do have Mr. McGuigan here, and before he steps up, or good going, come on through it. Alex, do we have anyone else online as well? Do we have anyone online? All right. And no, all right. All right. It doesn't look like we have anyone signed in. If you are online, if you want to sign in, then you can address the commission after Mr. McGuigan. And there was no one else signed in the presently in our conference room either. So, Mr. McGuigan.
Good morning, Commission and State Administrators. My name is Kevin McGuigan, and I have twice spoken about appraiser complaints reform. I'd like to update you on the process. At the last meeting, I spoke requesting 4 actionable items, and I'll quickly reiterate them. The first, a filter for egregiously frivolous allegations. The second, a better RFP process for reviewers, which takes into account a reviewer's appraisal review education, credentials, the volume experience that they have completed, and in other words, their overall competency. The third, implement specific assignment conditions to reviewers. And the fourth, a mentor program for first-time, long-time offenders. I was at this podium last meeting, and Ms. Matlock asked me to submit to them via email and my request, and we could talk. And we talked that this would initiate a process. We could talk about the request. The executive committee of the Tennessee Appraiser Coalition, TAC, met twice, and we talked and submitted an email with these 4 requests. Ms. Matlock responded to my email with her email with a conclusion. At this time, the information provided does not appear to be specific or detailed enough for adoption or consideration by the commission, unquote. And then she asked me to submit another email with more specific actionable items. And so that is why I'm here today. I'd like to know how to move forward. And if we get to the core of the issue, I'd like to go back to my initial comments. The complaint process is too punitive for frivolous complaints. All the appraisers that I have talked to agree the process can be made better. This is essentially a tort reform issue where an individual can inflict a lot of pain on an appraiser by simply filling out a form.
Go ahead. She's, just so you know, she's, your email and then her response as well, to get them caught up. Since you were quoting from it, they just want to make sure that they have all that material in front of them. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Yes, so this is essentially a tort reform. I'll go back to my last comment here. This is essentially a tort reform issue where an individual can inflict a lot of pain on an appraiser by simply filling out a form. Let's attempt to describe this pain. At least 10 to 20 hours of work to respond to the initial complaint and call your E&O insurance company. Much more time spent if anything goes further. Legitimate lingering stress. If the complaint passes the initial response, $10,000 to hire an attorney, the go-to-trial option. This is why there are so many conditional dismissals. The process is too punitive to go to trial. At this point, I would like to know, what is the best way to move forward to solve this problem? I think there is a problem, and that problem is that the process is too punitive for frivolous complaints. You asked me to submit an email, and I did, but I don't know if that was the best process. I believe the complaint process can be improved. I believe the commissioners think that the process could be improved. I'm wondering, can we form a committee to discuss this option? My last comments, we need the best reviewers in the state being paid full litigation review fees to be reviewing these appraisals. I do not know who the current reviewers are, as they are kept confidential, which I generally do not agree with. The state's attorneys are admittedly not appraisers, and they rely fully on the reviewers' opinions. From the state's previous comments, they do not pay market rate fees and therefore had minimal response to their RFP. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. McGuigan.
Just to kind of orient you, and thank you, Mr. McGuigan. His email is on the back side of your page. That was his contact with the request by the commission for a proposal. And then on the front side of that is Mrs. Matlock's response as well. And so, in essence, she addressed each of those 4 items. And the 4 items are, as we deemed it or viewed it, were broad topics. They weren't necessarily a proposal. It was more or less, these are the areas we have concern. But we haven't yet established that our current process is broken yet. We haven't. And so until we can, obviously anybody that's a subject complaint, every program, every board, it's a great stress on the individual just personally, and can be a toll financially. Mr. McGuigan did a good job explaining that. But to say that it's frivolous may be a leap. And so I don't know that we've established that yet. So I guess the difficulty for us was trying to understand what the need was for the reform. And then Ms. Matlock responded with those items. And typically, as far as proposals go, associations will sometimes do 1 or 2 things. Associations will create a committee, a task force themselves, and then give a thorough, they'll document what the problem is and establish why it's frivolous based on case studies. And then they'll give a proposal in that regard, a thorough proposal, like this is how you would solve that. And then, because the onus would be on the person that's making the allegation, not on the board to respond to that necessarily. And so that's what I would say to the association is just case studies as to establish validating why those are frivolous and where the breakdown is, and then a proposal through a committee or a work group, a task force at the association to address each of those. And then we can take those one by one. But the presupposition here is that the process is broken, which we haven't established that yet. And so then we're operating on a presupposition that is yet to be validated. And so until that happens, there's really no other action for the board to take until we first cross that first hurdle.
Okay, wonderful. And I'm not going to put words in the commission's mouth, but the initial process when we brought in many appraisers, and I thought we had talked about how there was a problem and how we were going to address it, or we could potentially talk about it. So I thought the problem had been formalized. And so the whole point of me coming up here and submitting emails was to figure out the process. The last meeting, you asked me to send you an email, and I did, and it appears now the process has changed. Furthermore, the TAC has fundraised money, and we would be happy to spend this money to research other states, to try to solve this problem. But I don't want to do that or to do all this work if it's going to be in vain. If this is not a receptive committee, I thought there was a receptive board, and then this last email I thought kind of shut the door to that. And so I would love to know y'all's stance on whether you would be receptive to reform.
Absolutely, always receptive to reform, but we have to establish that, one, there's a problem, and two, we have to have a process, a map, a roadmap to fix it. Until then, we're talking in the generic sort of general sense. We're speaking from the subjective. We're speaking from the experience of individuals. And so we have to show that there's a systemic problem across the complaint process. And once that's established with hard data, then we can proceed with that.
Lynn, how would we just determine that? If Mr. McGuigan wanted to pursue that, how will we determine that there is a problem?
The legal reports, those are public. Those are on the minutes. You could show what is the breakdown. What are you seeing here in the legal report that's not being handled correctly by this board?
So if I can chime in here, since, my email's been brought up and several things related to it. As I've said in several meetings before, and I will continue to say, this process, the complaint process that we have in place, is our real estate appraiser and commission is part of what we call an umbrella agency. So we are housed within the Department of Commerce and Insurance within the state of Tennessee. And so we in the Regulatory Boards Division regulate over 20 different occupational licensing programs. And in that process, we have established a complaint process and how that's handled uniformly across our programs. The only thing that is different from this program and how complaints are handled is the conditional dismissal process. And that process is not available in any other board or commission. So if the commission here decides that this is an issue, it's too punitive for the individuals to go to trial, or they have an issue, we can remove the conditional dismissal process and go back to just the legal report. And everything can be brought before you, and if there are findings found, we can go through that process, and you can make a determination at that point whether the individuals need to be issued a consent order, asking them to do something else at that point. If the conditional dismissal process is not something that we want to do anymore, we can remove that. That's not a requirement by rule or statute. So if that's an issue, we can remove it. Another thing that I'd like to mention is that the complaint process, I just celebrated my 7th year anniversary here at this department, and no other board that I've worked with has had any issue or attacks related to the complaint process that's been brought before us. It's been established for years. It's anonymous, the process. It's the best way we think that is to move forward. Mr. McGuigan is correct. We are not real estate appraisers, so we do rely on our expert reviewers. We have not had issues with our expert reviewers to this date. We've not had any problems with that, to my knowledge, of what exactly is going on. So again, that's how this process has worked for years, and that is how I foresee the process to change. If we're going to have substantial change, then it has to go beyond this commission. It has to go within the legal team, has to go through the administration team and everything else. My point of view is that we don't have an issue with our complaint process, and I will stand firmly and believe that. Just because an individual has a complaint and they were issued a conditional dismissal and they're upset with how that was handled, that doesn't mean there's an issue with the complaint process. Our conditional dismissals are the same way as anything else is handled. So if our expert reviewers find an issue and it's considered to be frivolous, I don't know exactly. The definition, frivolous is such a broad topic. And yes, some of the issues may be considered minor as others, but if your report is out of compliance, our expert reviewers are doing their job when they find those findings. If I have an issue with the brief that's been submitted by the court, I'm going to have to address that with the court. So anything, whether it's minor or not, I think our expert reviewers are doing their jobs, even if it's not being considered to be a big issue or something that's considered to be frivolous. And again, the last thing I'll say is I'll bring it back again. I appreciate this commission. I think that this board is a great board, and I just want to say that the Tennessee Real Estate Appraisers, this board, the individuals, the licensees, are no different than the other 300,000 licensees that we license in this state. It is no more punitive than any other individuals. We have other boards that also require expert reviewers. They have to do the same thing. It is based on consumer protection. The consumers are who we're worried about and harm here. Yes, it's important that we look after our real estate appraisers, but when we take on our job as professionals, we have to be held to certain standards. Just like if someone has an issue with me, they can file a complaint with the Board of Professional Responsibility, and I have to do the exact same thing. I have to respond to anything that's been submitted on my behalf. There's nothing different here that's provided. Nothing is required above and beyond what anyone else is required to do. So I do not believe that we have an issue with our complaint process. I do believe that we may have individuals that are disgruntled with this complaint process, but I have individuals in every single board that are disgruntled with the complaint process because no one wants to be called out on the issues that they've been cited with. None of us want to make mistakes, but that's what is provided here. So that's all I'll say. I did take the email seriously. I wrote the best to my ability. A lot of the things that have been provided, we already do. And if it's not exactly what they're looking for, I can't, other than turning over the complaint process to someone else, I don't know how else to fix that. But the issues have been addressed with seriousness, and we've talked about them. And so I don't want anyone to think that we're passing these things off, because that is certainly not the case, and that's not what I would ever do. But at this point, I do not know what else to do, and I hope I conveyed that in my email, and you have the full context of what it would be. I would hope that you guys would know the caliber of work and the character that the people here at this that we work for, what we think, and I'm going to defend the people that work in this department and the other areas to the best of my ability, because I do believe that we do good work for the citizens of Tennessee and this board.
And just to give a little bit more information on what the conditional dismissal process is, because I know not everybody's completely informed on that. Conditional dismissal is an option that was created by the commission to allow first-time offenders with no history an option to take a course that the expert reviewer recommends based on their findings, and then the complaint is closed in our side with no action. And the continuing education course also goes to continuing education requirements. They don't have to report this. We don't report it. It's like a close with no action. They just get to take a course. That was created because we understand appraisers have insurance requirements and as a way for them to get the education without having going to formal discipline. However, if conditional dismissals are not what they want to continue moving forward with, this is the only commission that does that. So we can back out of the conditional dismissals, have everything on the report, and have it go through the consent order process if disciplinary action is required. If I get a report back and it is someone that's a first-time offender, but there were just minor things found, I don't even do the conditional dismissal process. I present it to you as a close or just a letter. So these are only going through conditional dismissal processes if there are numerous issues found and they have no history.
Thank you. That was definitely a question that I had because I was unsure, but I do remember that taking place. He did mention the reviewers, and I know in the history we've talked about this, and so it just might be helpful just for the commission. How exactly is the RFP process? How do you go about obtaining reviewers, and how many reviewers do we have?
I think it's anywhere from like 3 to 5 reviewers, but what we do every year is there's an RFP that's sent out. I believe the last time we did it, we have one for certified general and one for certified residential, and those are posted on the website. I review those RFPs. Our procurement office will draft something, but draft for us. But I review the information that's requested, the experience requirements. We require certain amounts of appraisals to be submitted, and then it's open for individuals to submit their bids of what they would like to do. And so the bidding process is, there are 2 different processes essentially where individuals can submit their own amount through the RFP process, what they would like to be charged, or it's something that we would submit with saying this is the amount that we're going to do for the appraisals. I believe the amount now, I think what we do is the individuals submit the bid amount that they would like. So the issue that we have had several times is we release the RFPs and no one responds to the RFPs. They're posted publicly for individuals to provide, and if we don't receive bids from persons, we can't, we don't have the expert reviewers. And that doesn't mean that the ones that we do submit, we're just accepting because that's, we need them. We're looking at all of the requirements that are set out in the RFP process. The last time that we went through the RFP process, I coordinated with another attorney from a different jurisdiction to make sure our requirements were adjacent to other states, to see if this is what they're looking for their certified general or certified residential individuals. If we don't want to do that process anymore, we can look at that. Some states just have their board members review the reports, and then they're the individuals that do that. But again, that would be another amount, that would be additional work for you guys to consider. But if that's something else we want to do, we can do that. Also, other states, my understanding, sometimes employ an individual that is a certified general or certified residential appraiser, and then that person reviews all of the complaints and brings it back to the board and the commission. So we submit them publicly, and then we look at the bids to make sure everything is required. And as long as the individuals meet the requirements and submit everything that's required, because sometimes individuals don't complete them. That's how the RFP process works.
Excellent. And thank you for that. How often, when would you say when that's submitted that you don't get a response back? Is that?
The last time, I want to say we resubmitted them maybe 2 or 3 different times over because we didn't get any responses from individuals. And we've had appraisers from Tennessee before, and then also in neighboring jurisdictions that are also licensed here. So I know we had one individual that was both licensed in Mississippi and in Tennessee. So it goes beyond our state, but everyone is required to hold a Tennessee license to do that. So we've had to send out the bids before again. And I would say every time we send out the bids, they've had to go out at least twice.
And I'll just speak a little bit on the reviewers since I work hand in hand with them. I would say all the reviews we get are pretty detailed and explanations of what findings they have and why, then pull directly from the report or the complaint or the response and point to how they got to that, with also recommending a class that they think is most appropriate if we go through the conditional dismissal process. If not, I have reached out to reviewers previously to ask them to give more information or to look over something again. We've also had reviewers decline because they're not competent in that area or they have a conflict. So it's not like they're just accepting even if they don't believe that they can review it or if they know the person. We've had plenty of them decline and it goes to the next reviewer.
Excellent. Thank you. That's very helpful because we don't see that side of things and don't really understand. I know in the past the commission has talked about some sort of standardized review process, maybe something, and that's not in place, right? So when they're providing the review, it's just they're providing you with a summary back, or is that?
So, they give a detailed breakdown of each section of the report. They're pretty similar. They each have their own form that they use, but they're all following the same idea. It's subject name, the section, what they find, why they found it, what the violation is. And what the next step should be for that violation. Like they each have their own form that maybe looks a little bit different. Some of them insert pictures and stuff, but they're all giving pretty much the same information.
Is there a world in if there was maybe a standardized form that we sent out that, because we get it back and it's a summary of it, but is there a world where we would actually be able to see, if there was a state standardized use PAP checklist review, that we would be able to have that in addition for review when it comes to us? Is that possible? Or
I don't see an issue with that. Of course, we'd have to develop that, and but that's not. I don't foresee that being a particular issue.
I just know that on my history on the board, there's always been talks of that. Hey, this standardized review form that that everybody would kind of follow, and so I think that could be helpful, and something that we do have jurisdiction over, and not having to reinvent the wheel here, and maybe see if it provides the commission more information, and then also helps the reviewers as well. So.
I guess my question would be, we could do this form, but in the legal reports, the information that we've been providing you and the things and how it's summarized, I haven't heard any issues of the information that's come back from you. So I guess my question is the information that we've been submitting in the legal reports not accurate enough, or is it just we want to have something that goes across the board for everyone to fill out? Because Taylor said they may vary in how the information is submitted to us, like they don't do a specific form, but they're pretty similar in how it comes back.
Yeah, no, not at all. I think that, you'll do a great job, so I'm not saying that at all. I just, if there was a standardized review process or a form or something that they all came across in the same way, it could maybe be helpful for the reviewer, first off, because I know that I have done reviews for the board, and it's just like, hey, here's the report, do it. And if there was like something that was a more template standardized, because I see bank reviewers, and there's a couple in the area who do most of the reviews, and it's the same. It's a USPAP checklist with like an area for comments, like it sources, in USPAP the issue, and so I know they all kind of use the same thing, and so if that would help, either provide more explanation and standardize things, it's maybe something that we could look at.
Sure, because like we control the RFP process, so the information that and the requirements that we ask of individuals, we can control what we want and provide. So if there's a form that we need to create, that's something that we can include in the future.
Yeah, and two of the reviewers, they do use a form that looks standardized, so I'm assuming they got that maybe from the bank reviews or something like that, because they're exactly the same. There is one reviewer that does it a little bit differently, but it's the same information, so I mean, it wouldn't be any issue for them to start using that. It's just broken down a little bit differently. But I can clear one out and send it to you guys so you can just see that standardized form that those two are using and see if that's something that you want to move forward with asking all the reviewers to use, or if you want to make any changes to it.
Does anybody else have? I just know that we have talked about that over the history of the commission, and didn't know if that would help with the. I don't want to cause any more work for you, but
no, yeah, like I said,
you can just redact it.
Yeah, just redact it, and so you can just see what that one is, because, like I said, numerous of them use that. So I'm guessing maybe they got it from a bank or something, or from somewhere, and so it's pretty, looks like a standardized form. So I can just redact one so you can see what it looks like. And if there's anything that when you look at it and you feel like, oh, I wish it also was doing this, I can ask them to include that in the next one. Or if you're like, this looks great, I can ask the reviewers that don't use that form to begin to use that form.
Also, I'll ask the procurement office if it's an issue, but we can see the last RFP that was sent out and the qualifications, the things that we're asking of our reviewers. We can bring that back and let you guys see it and have your any edits or suggestions related to that.
I think that would all be helpful. And
Yeah,
so,
sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you write it?
If I could make an observation and maybe kind of ask a broad question. The legal report provided, case opened February 10th, 2025, and it's April 21st, 2025, and it's now closed. That seems like a pretty reasonable amount of time to have handled this. By reading the facts here, probably a relatively minor situation. So maybe summarize how this one went through that process, kind of in relation to the things we've been talking about and the things in the email, because it sounds like it was just a disgruntled, someone that didn't agree with value, and it was treated in that way. Just kind of walk us through how that went down.
Yeah, so that complaint comes in through our centralized complaint department, and they send it out for a request for a response to the respondent. They, I believe, get 2 weeks to respond. At that point, once a response comes in, it comes over to legal. I review it, and if there's any allegations of the appraisal being improper, such as the comparables used or anything like that, I'll send it out for a review. So a expert reviewer can look through it and see if there's any issues with the report that need to be spoken about. At that point, once I get the review back, which, again, we only meet quarterly, so the review just wasn't back before the last meeting based on the time it came in, because we give them 30 days to complete the review. Once the review comes back, if it's something that I deem is possible for conditional dismissal, meaning they found numerous issues, they have no history, I would write up a conditional dismissal. It goes out to them. They get to decide if they want to go through with it. If they don't want to go through with it, it goes on the next report and it comes to you. If they do go through with the conditional dismissal, at that point, they complete the continuing education course and it's closed out. Once it gets to me, if there are no issues as there are in this one, I just give a brief explanation of the complaint and of the response, and then just let you know the expert found no issues and recommend closure. If there are issues and they cannot do a conditional dismissal, I'll break down the issues that are found within the report by the expert, and you guys discuss which courses you think are appropriate for the issues that were found.
To ask a specific question about this case, I guess, the complaint was about value and comps, but it went under a USPAP review. Does the reviewer review value and USPAP, or just one or the other?
Just the USPAP violations.
Value-only complaints don't go out for review.
Correct.
Because we don't have jurisdiction over value. And also, you've seen complaints before that also maybe deal with something related to like professionalism or ethics or something like that. Those complaints don't go out for review either, so that would just be summarized by us and then presented to you all there.
And a lot of times, our centralized complaints department, if they open a complaint and see it's a value only or outside our jurisdiction, they will send it to Anna and just request permission to close it for lack of jurisdiction, which happens quite often, so then it doesn't even get over to me or to a reviewer. which we do have that filter system. So I know that's something that he mentioned.
Do you mind if the devil's in the details, this complaint was about comps, and you're saying it's not about value?
They allege that there were use violations based on the comparables found. It was a much longer complaint, but since there was no use violations found, I didn't feel like there was a need to go into a lot of information provided on there.
Okay. You guys have made a very thorough response, and I appreciate your all's role. But I do think if we could get back to square one, I think there is a problem. And that is because I have talked to so many appraisers that believe there's a problem. And so to say that we have not defined there's a problem, I work in an opinion business and gather data all the time. I mean, that's what I do for a living. I provided my first comments were about 4 or 5 different states that do it better. And so there's a better process that could be done.
And just to touch on that, I do think you need to recognize that certain states that you're referring to, because we have gone to the Aero conferences, they are independent agencies, a lot of them. As Anna had mentioned, we have to follow certain guidelines by our umbrella agency that other states are not have to adhere to.
Okay, so I guess we're admitting there's a problem, but we can't solve it?
No one's saying there's
Nobody
a
said
problem.
that.
I'm just saying things are handled differently in different states, and you're failing to recognize information that you've been given, and you're speaking over information you've been given instead of recognizing what you've been told.
I'll go back to the simple analysis that we can do the process better, and I would love to get to the bottom of it. I would love to have a committee, some sort of actionable result.
And are you providing any solutions, or because all we've seen is just issues? No solutions have been provided within the email that you sent over.
Well, I mean, I guess I'm to that point where we're at that crossroads where if I provide a solution, it seems like it's going to go in vain. I don't know that I can provide a solution that you guys would accept.
No, it's okay. It's just, I think what we're hearing, though, is a matter of preference, and it's not, and that prerogative belongs to the board and to the umbrella agency. And it's like, unless, there's a lot of independent agencies that will do a lot of different sort of items. They sort of take a boutique option. But unless there's something broken or something that we can adopt to fix, because there's being alleged that there's a problem. One case is that we talked about the RFP process. There was 2 points in your initial reaching out to us, number 2 and 3, where you were talking about how we need a better RFP process. We need a specific assignment conditions to reviewers.
Yes, sir.
But then at the very beginning, we mentioned that we didn't know what that process was. We didn't know who those reviewers were. So we can't have both.
I think if you asked the commission, they could do a thorough search of the best reviewers in the state, and they could pinpoint those people to you. I think the problem is those reviewers don't want to do this work because of the fees. But these people will do the work if the fees are correct.
Is part of the RFP process for a reviewer when y'all send it out, are they setting their own fees, or is this state?
We're going to, Anna's going to look at procurement and have that pulled for. I think that's going to be very helpful. If we can get that information from, I think that'll be very helpful, because when you see the RFP, you'll realize it's very robust. We're not just taking, some fella walked off the street because he'll do it for less. I mean, we've actually shut folks down that were the only response, and then recycled it again because they didn't meet the minimum qualifications. I did a home inspector RFP. That's home inspector. Those guys have 90 hours of QE. That's it, and they had to have 10 years experience in their respective field, covering the wide gamut. So we had one guy that had construction experience all over the place, but didn't have 10 years in the scope of as a licensee. He didn't make it. He didn't make the cut, and so it's robust.
But to answer your question, Mr. Hasten, we have done it both ways, where we have provided a range of the amount that for reviews, and we've also done it where the individuals have submitted their bids to us as well.
All right. Any other comments?
I'm sorry. I was going to ask, was the response similar when you did that, both kind of a range of fees, or just leaving up that it was a very lack of response?
It's still just a general lack of response from it. And I mean, we have sent out lists through email servers. Like, I mean, we've gone through the list of licensees to submit it, we've posted it. If there's another way of individuals to get people to submit what is required, let us know, because we have done all of the ways that our procurement office, both here within our department and at the central office for procurement, we do the procurement process the same way that everyone else does.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, if it was done like other committees, where
Right,
it's just
so-
posted as a notice, or if it also email blast to the licensees, or what that
Right,
process
we've
looks like.
tried to do it several ways, especially when we have had those times where we've not received a response.
Is there a, what's the latest, is this on a yearly basis? And y'all may have said this, is it an annual basis, or is this a two-year contract? What's the?
No, it's for a certain amount of time. I'll have to ask. I think individuals probably do around 3 to 5 years, however long they sign their contract for. And so then that's how long it would last for.
And the board members themselves can do the expert reviews. In A&E, we do that. I mean, they can put it out for expert review, but oftentimes we have now. They're at an advantage because they have 3 associate engineers. The bulk of their stuff is engineers, and they have 3 associate engineers that primarily can do reviews. And they'll make a recommendation, like a committee would to the board. I recommend this, and they can answer all the details because they've seen it all, and they're not voting, so they're not having to recuse themselves. In your case, since y'all are voting members, the person who did the expert review on that particular case would have to recuse themselves. But you'd be read into the entire case. You know who it was, where they came from, what they did, all of it. So that's an option as well. But I mean, we I don't know if you want to invite that upon yourself. I mean, we've got you're going to be getting those cases. So and we pay somebody for that. So that's and rightfully so. And
But it's an option if that is something that the board would like to do and explore in the future. Of course, we'd have to wait until the contracts right now are complete with our expert reviewers. But if that's the way that you would like to do it, it's certainly a cost-saving measure for the commission.
Why would you not pay a board member to do the review?
Is that because the individuals? I'm sorry. Let me try again. They do not receive payment for their position on the board. And so if we're paying them to do work and also vote and make decisions for discipline for other individuals, that's a huge conflict of interest. They would not be, no,
voting.
I'm not finished. They would not be an independent individual at that point. They're an interested party because they're receiving payment. So no, if we were to do it that route, our board members would not receive payment. Am I making it sense why it would be considered to be a conflict of interest for you to review that, and then if it were to go to hearing, we would get annihilated. You saying that the individual from opposing counsel, that we have paid one of our board members to do work that's being presented to them, it just wouldn't work.
Do you understand how frustrating it might feel as an appraiser to hear that your reviewers are not being paid market rates, and that you have?
But there
very
are
few-
reviewers that are coming back. We have 2 or 3 reviewers that were in the last contract and then renewed their contract, so they obviously feel like they're getting paid enough for it to be worth their time and to take on multiple reviews. And so I don't think that you can speak for somebody that you're not aware of or know what their feelings are on how much they're getting paid to do these reviews, because I know for multiple that they set their own fees.
If you were to look at a parallel state agency, TDOT, they go and seek out the best appraisers and pay them substantial rates to do condemnation work. They have no problem finding appraisers to do the hardest work in the state. And so I would hope that the board would have a similar goal, to have the best reviewers and pay them full fees to do these reviews. And my goal today, and I wanted to be a part of this because part of her comments were that we've had this discussion twice previously. And the last 2 times I gave my comments and sat down And this time, I wanted to be a part of the conversation. And I hope to not offend you, but I do want to express that there are many appraisers that feel the process is not the best. It could be better. And so I'm here to express those feelings, to make a move for reform. And I would love for the commission to take up this task, to have a committee to somehow make it better. And I'll sit down. Thank you.
And I just want to know if a board member wants to delegate themselves to be doing double reviews after an expert reviewer reviews it, if you want to look over that expert review and give another review on how you feel about that and just not vote on the matter, that is something we can start doing. I can send them out to a designated board member to look over the reviewer's information. You just won't be able to vote on the matters.
Yeah, I don't see that probably moving forward, but I do think that, he mentioned, and we've kind of talked about that, I think getting the information in front of us and we can take a look at it, and, the review form, and then, if there is anything that the commission feels, then, to add or whatever, then we can talk about it, but maybe getting the information in front of us
Yeah,
at that time.
I can get that over to you. And then additionally, like I know he had mentioned conditional dismissals. They were created to be a helpful tool, but if that is something that we do not want to move forward with anymore, and I can just put everything on the legal report, that is something that we are also able to do.
So I would just ask, when we provide the information at the next meeting, if you will bring any and all thoughts about what it is you want to do to that meeting, it would be incredibly helpful. So we don't have to keep having this conversation meeting to meeting to meeting. I mean, it is something we can continue to do, but there should be an end to this at some point. So we can at least have some kind of decision whatever is going to happen. Because I don't know if at this point we're talking in circles and if it's even productive. So if you'll provide, we'll give you the information. I'll see if we can get it to you in advance as soon as we have it. If there are any follow-up questions you have before the board meeting, so we can come fully prepared to answer those questions for you and we don't have to follow up, please let us know. Because I would like to be able to have something concrete and definitive moving forward.
Thank you for that. That's great. I think that's a really good thought that we should all come a little bit more prepared. Not that y'all weren't prepared. I'm saying about the commission members ready to discuss this. I had a thought and I'm just lost it. I'll chime in if I remember what I was going to say.
That's the story of my life, Will. I do that all the time now. I don't even know what's going on. Yeah, if you figure it out, let me
I
know.
have one question. I've been a reviewer, so I found that it was very difficult to do reviews on areas that I was not familiar with. And obviously, most of the time, the people that are complaining, it's about value. My question is, do you have any training for the reviewers as to what they should be looking for? I know it's USPAP, but do they go to a training course or anything?
No, ma'am. It's based upon their experience, what they know about appraisers and what they know about USPAP. That's all we're asking is when we give the individuals the appraisals to review is we're just looking for USPAP violations and the information that's been alleged by the complainant and the response by the respondent to see if there's anything there that we've missed. So there's not a specific training. I don't believe that we would be, if there's, I'm not sure exactly who would have that training exactly because we're just relying upon their expertise to go on that at that point. But if that's something that we think needs to be done, we can do that. But again, at that point, we would need to figure out who would also do that training for the reviewers.
I do remember what I was going to ask. So from hearing and understanding what y'all were discussing earlier from the review process or the, did you say that this would have to change from a commerce and insurance department level before it could get to us?
Like for the entire, if we're wanting to change the entire complaint process, yes. But if we're wanting to make changes to how our reviewers review the complaint, that's something that we can do at our level, because obviously it would be a subject matter issue. But if we're wanting to do something completely different, then that would need to go to people above us.
Who would be responsible for that? How would that happen? Say we did want to pursue that, what would be the course of action?
So at that point, we would, I would bring that to my supervisors, the chief and deputy counsel, deputy general counsel. Glenn would bring it to his supervisor, which is the assistant commissioner for regulatory boards. I imagine there would be a meeting between those persons and even our general counsel, deputy commissioner, deciding what we would do at that point. But again, if that is something, if we're wanting to make a specific, change to the complaint process, that we would need to be able to tell them what it is that we're wanting to change.
Sure.
Because we don't, right now, I don't have that to bring to them.
Right. I just wanted to understand how that would.
Yes, that's how it would go.
Got it.
Speak on the second half of your question, we have had reviewers decline to review a report because they didn't feel confident in the area that the subject property was in.
I was just going to comment based on everything I've heard this meeting and prior meetings. Sounds like the only actionable item and the only thing within our jurisdiction as this group that could do reasonably and reasonably quickly is come up with the standardized form like Mr. Manfield was talking about, and she was receptive to. It also seems like something we could round up between now and next meeting and have something on the agenda to actually discuss. And the one thing I would add to that thought process is, and it goes back to Mr. McGuigan's email and the response, the quote specific assignment conditions, I think was like the vague comment used, and it was referenced as being vague. And this is just my thought process here. I don't know what those reviewer forms look like. I've never seen one. I don't do that. But assuming there's 50 or 60 or 100 line items that are being reviewed, if the administrators could maybe remove the ones that aren't in question, and so that the reviewer does not have just a complete blank slate to find every single USPAP violation, whether minor or not, in a report, and have it targeted towards the complained activity, so that it's not reviewing every single possible line item that there is. That's my addition to that request.
All right, any other comments, questions in that regard? All right. Last call for public comments online. Do we have anything there? No? Okay. Chair, and the only thing we have left then is to adjourn.
All right. All those in favor leave.
All right.
Aye.